Yes, welcome to Chatting Up the Chick. This is episode 4, and this is Wladek Cherry Porridge. I won't say his name properly because I can't, and I've already had a bit of hemp beer, so we'll stay as we are. But yes, we're talking to Vlad, and Vlad has delightfully come onto the podcast today to talk to us about trees. Isn't that right, Vlad?
Yeah, hi. Yes, it is.
I thought it was trees and heaps.
Trees and hemp. Trees and hemp.
Trees. Well, it's a green thing. Yeah, why not? It competes with trees for carbon sequestration, hemp. That's a fact that I enjoyed very much. So if you really want to stop global warming, plant hemp, really.
It does good beers as well. This is a classic New Zealand hemp maple beer, the Big Kahuna. Apparently it's a joint effort.
With Canada, because it's incredibly...
Right. So as I like to start these podcasts, Vlad, I like to start with my opening question to get the conversation going. So I would like to know, why did you want to talk about trees?
Well, I needed a topic and I couldn't figure one out, and then I like trees, so it bubbled to the surface. But wow, this our previous conversation about a beer. I'm like, oh, why didn't I choose that topic? Trees. I went planting trees with you recently. It's a great thing. Phil was there. Phil supplied the beer on that occasion.
I did. I don't think I did too much planting, but I did more drinking than I did planting.
You did bring
Can I just make a disclaimer? We're not alcoholics. No, it is Saturday
Speak
evening.
for yourself.
It's 5:30 and it is beer time, so that is why we have beverages in our hands. Anyway, sorry, back to you, Vlad.
Yeah, trees. How did actually what happened is why the trees sits in my head and it became a topic is years ago, long time ago, I was looking into Israeli technology into desert reversal and stuff like that. And these guys came along there in 48 and did some good stuff in the desert, planted stuff everywhere and stuff. And that spurred me. Ever since then, I've been Googling that stuff. I don't know. Interesting.
About 48 Israelis in the desert.
Yeah, really, actually. There's a lot of, and they also, they're planting a lot of trees in the deserts, and they got desalination going quite, a lot of people do have it going, but the guys seem to be working well in the desert. And so that search went broader, and I was looking at, ever since, every now and then I will enjoy a good YouTube on whoever is planting what forest or whatever, or
so just a topic
I keep my eye on, really.
So for people that might be listening, when you say in the desert, what are you actually alluding to?
Well, deserts are growing, right? So it's just a nice thing to actually watch a YouTube and see how deserts get hammered back. It's very satisfying. Really.
So you're saying about reversing desertification.
Yeah, that's what got me all into trees and stuff. Yeah, love trees.
So reclaiming back the desert with trees.
I love trees.
Make it lush, fertile ground.
Yeah.
Right. We're there. Now we understand what's going on. Yucks and bells.
Yes.
So what was your question, Phil?
Oh, well, I was going to ask about hemp.
Yes, that's...
I agree. Love the beer.
What's so great about it, in your opinion?
Well, for example, I think it's a relevant topic because it does compete with trees for carbon sequestration. So happy to include it in the topic. Great question. What was the question again?
No, I wanted to just get an understanding of, I think it's interesting to hear people's perspective of, certain things like that, especially hemp.
Oh,
well. So I just wanted to get your perspective of what you think is so great about it.
Well, trees heal the earth in a huge way in reversing deserts. I think hemp goes even further in providing even more solutions for a lot of needs that we have. For example, you can probably produce more paper, like writing paper, per acre of hemp than you do trees, and then so the hemp itself saves that bit of forest. You don't have to chop down, right? So I find hemp is even umphier in solving a lot of the issues we have, really, all kinds of issues, job related, farming related, environment. Yeah, it's like a miracle plant, really.
I was actually reading this quite extraordinary blog the other day regarding hemp, and let me just read a little excerpt. I know this is probably the most boring thing you could do, so I'll do it in a really excitable voice so you don't get too bored. Oh man, there are very few things in life that excite me anymore. And I say that more from a place of being a minimalist, and much of this world is a framework of materialism that breeds consumerism. This concept holds no excitement for me whatsoever. In actual fact, it is the prime reason for the type of world we live in today, where we have a massive wealth redistribution problem. We are raping the land of its natural resources, and those in power are not even bothered by the ongoing effects, i.e. climate breakdown because of deforestation, one to highlight. Fortunately, there is a plant called hemp that could be the next environmental revolution, which is a misnomer, as I hope to highlight, in regards to solving our reliance on plastic, fossil fuels and soil degradation because of monoculture farming. Well, look, see, this guy, I tell you what, he knows what he's talking about. Do you know who this guy is?
Christian.
This guy. Yeah, it was me. Oh damn! Look, I've just lost myself, literally, because my camera just fell over. See, got so excited. Yeah, I actually wrote a whole blog on the hemp revolution. So if you really want to read it, I'll give the details at the end of this podcast. But yeah, I love hemp. Hemp is there's the only downfall to hemp is the fact that it's very difficult to harvest. It's the only downfall. Like literally everything that hemp can do in terms of anything that plastic can do, hemp can do just as well, if not better. And the great thing about hemp in that sense is that it biodegrades within 3 to 6 months, whereas plastic takes up to 1,000 years. So, you know, where's the competition? There is none. I don't understand why we as a world entity are not embracing hemp much harder and much faster, just for that simple fact alone. I'll go on, but I won't because I want to have a sip.
We did ask the question to Vlad, not you, but thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, so that same fire that gets you thinking about and solutions. I mean, I got some of that spark for trees as well, you know, just deserts and stuff. But there's a word I have here, monoculture farming. Yeah, that's been a lot of criticisms of people who have planted a lot of trees. It's been only those trees where it is usually native grasses and stuff like that that really benefit that environment the most. And as a consequence, in some places where they only focused on monoculture, they found that things actually got worse with the soil, things like that. Yeah.
All the nutrients were just washed away on the topsoil because the topsoil wasn't stable enough because of the monoculture farming.
Africa completely reversed its efforts in the desert. Big effort going on in there, and they're diversifying a lot. They're planting a lot of local things as well, grasses, not just trees. Yeah, so they really doing the whole thing and working out as well.
Yeah, that's the new regenerative farming practice. Is you have your rows of, say, corn or whatever it might be that you're growing, and alongside of it you'll have some sort of either have anyone heard of the plant the Cumbrian? It's a plant that's it's a nitrogen.
Is that a cousin of cannabis?
No. It's a nitrogen fixer. So it basically fixes the nitrogen levels within the soil. So people would plant this alongside
the other plants that they're planting to keep that keep the level of the soil at a situation where it's not losing its nutrients. It's also keeping the soil in a good structure, so if there is a lot of rain, the topsoil isn't just being washed off to a river or something like that. It's actually staying where it's supposed to be, like a sponge rather than what it is at the moment. But anyway,
Yeah,
that's a
ideally,
discussion for like people who actually know what they're talking about. So
yeah, but hypothetically, I mean, if you can stretch it further, then ideally you plant something else alongside that, and then alongside that. I mean,
Yeah.
and then you can get
shouldn't
a
just be
whole
barren paddocks.
Yeah, okay.
But I want to say something else about hemp.
All right, where you go?
I'm such a I'm like the hemp man. I want to get a hemp costume and just bowl around, the town. I'm the hemp man. I'm the hemp man. Yeah. I'm the hemp man. The hemp washing liquid is so clean. You can do a wash in the machine, take out the water that was used, and water your garden without any issues. Because there's no nasty toxic chemicals that could ruin your soil or anything like that. Again, like you think about, everyone washes clothes, but where does the water go? Down your great pipe and out into the sea.
Well, not necessarily. They in ships and stuff like that, they call that water grey water, and so they take that water, process it a little bit, and then they put it out to sea. So
yeah. No, but all the grey water goes into like anytime you use a sink, toilet, that's all grey water. It all goes down the same pipe. It'll go to a wastewater pumping station, which will then go to a treatment plant, which will then treat the water and then send it off. But my point of saying is that water is just being doused, like it's just one use water. Like if you can use that water again as another byproduct, and in this case, if you've got a garden that you cultivate or anything like that, you can use that water again to be put in your garden, rather than having to use potable water that's coming out of the ground or from reservoirs or whatever it is. And we all know how much of a dilemma we're in the world when it comes to fresh water, especially accessible fresh water.
Well, you look at some of our suburbs in Christchurch. We're starting to being charged for water. So.
But without going down a tangent onto something completely unrelatable to trees and hemp, the other thing I would say is hemp oil is being refined into biofuel, so you can use it as a biofuel. So not only are you using a plant that sequestrates carbon out of the air really well, but and also fixes soils, but you can also use the byproduct of the plant.
Yeah, okay.
Run it in a way where it's clean.
Well.
What's that?
Can't they restore nuclear soil, tainted soil? I mean, I don't know what it's called. Technical.
Yeah, Chernobyl. They planted hemp around Chernobyl, and it actually cleaned up the radioactive soil.
Yeah,
which is nuts. That's like you don't get more impressive than that. Come on, hey, I've done some impressive things. You saw me in Kaikoura during my great shot that I played on the second hole that almost went in hole in one.
I think I got a video of that.
Have you? But don't show it now. Jeez.
I think it was the fourth hole.
Oh yeah,
the one that you were least intoxicated on.
Yes. But also hemp. Many new food sources are being created with the hemp seed. So you got like hemp burgers, hemp ice cream, hemp milk, hemp protein, and also, of course, the joint effort, the Big Kahuna, the hemp beer. And non-toxic paints and lubricants are being made out of hemp as well. So, you can paint your house with a hemp paint. It'll be all totally natural and biodegradable and no toxins whatsoever. And that's just scraping the barrel when it comes to hemp. Like,
Yeah,
It's so
it's
much.
interesting stuff.
But the only thing that concerns me though is that it's like there is a big push in the world currently towards going away from meat and meat alternatives and all sorts of other sort of healthy sort of living. But because we're such a huge population of people, no matter how good we do things, it's like avocados, are drying up huge areas of lakes and deserts, and same with nut farming. What would you do? If we created such an industry around hemp, do you think that would be kind of damaging in its own way, even though hemp is such a great product? But if we were to start producing it in such large quantities, would that actually be good for the planet?
Yeah, hey, I can weigh in on that straight away. The sort of non-meat eating sort of everybody else has been highly criticized that a lot of these things are imported, so you've got to start working in, say, fuel burn from the aeroplane into your products that you're buying that are so green and wonderful, you see. So you're right, you're completely correct. It is, and avocado is drying up the lakes, yeah, and then we're importing it, so we here are contributing to drought problems, yeah. So all the fancy green stuff is making it actually worse. Battery cars are worse, almost, if you've ever heard that. Well, bad, not good. They're not clean. But hemp is different, because the problem is not the good product that's bad, is because it's got to be imported. Hemp can be grown locally, so then we don't have a lot of those costs, those offsets. You're correct, they are there.
Okay. All right.
And let
what about
me.
Small countries, though?
Sorry.
What about the small countries? You look at the population of Japan and how big they, in terms of landmass, have. I don't think they could potentially provide enough hemp production, for the size of land that they have. Like, they would need to import it from at some point, right?
Production
Yeah, well,
for what?
somebody's going to want to buy their cars and then have hemp on hand, and then there's going to be trade agreements. Besides, people are urbanizing so much that land is not always the issue. There is land available for them to do it. Probably not a lot, but I mean, they're savvy people. They'll have something else to sell for what their needs are.
Well, I think also the important thing to realize about hemp is that it's a weed. Like, the definition of it is a weed. Like, it can grow anywhere, and it doesn't really need particular soil for it to grow. Like, it will literally grow anywhere. The issue being is that the things that hemp can do to change the world is the most important thing. Like, if for instance, if the way I look at it is, you have, say, like New Zealand, there's always talk about, we rely on the dairy industry, and the dairy industry is on a downhill run, and it's not making any money and all this, and dairy businesses are going to go out of business and all this kind of stuff, and woe is me and all that. But there's never like this kind of talk of, well, then why don't we turn all these dairy farms into hemp farms? And then all of a sudden you have a brand new, you open up this whole new world of what hemp can do for you. Like I've said, like, just from the 5 things I was talking about in terms of like hemp products that you can create, like whether it's through the building industry or packaging, or you're creating food sources through the hemp seed and stuff like that. There's a 1,001 things that you can do.
Let's some few of the whoppers quickly in a row. So we got the radioactive soil. It helps with radioactive soil. You already mentioned fuel. I mean, I don't know how viable it is, but it's possible. So yes.
So the building industry can use what's called hempcrete to basically like use as insulation and use it as some sort of a covering. What's the word I'm looking for? You know, when you put on
Plaster.
like a plaster, yeah, but it's made out of hemp, so it's completely natural. And don't quote me on this. This is just something I heard from a professor that it also, because it's a natural product, it still has an element of sequestration happening even after it's been So it turns the building into a living buildings per se. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Talked about the hemp washing liquid and stuff like that. Hemp oil for biodiesels.
Yes.
You got
Domestic
you got food sources, the packaging. You know, just the packaging alone. If you could turn hemp, if you could turn all these industries that are just pumping
big-
out plastic
big
after plastic after plastic after plastic for like food and all that, anything that uses plastic, and you started using hemp, like it totally revolutionized the world in the sense of where we are going in this direction towards total destruction, whether it's the fact that one of the biggest sequesters of carbon is the seas, but the seas are just being clogged up with plastic.
Yeah.
You like me to go on?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think my concern is that like hemp is so versatile in so many industries, and it's so it's so good. But the only problem is that I think no matter what sort of magical plant or anything we make or find or use, I think just purely because of the sheer quantity and how we consume and how we go about our lives, kind of will ultimately still have the same result regardless. It's not like I think I don't don't get me wrong, I don't say you shouldn't go towards hemp. I think hemp it's like currently we're using plastics that don't degrade very easily, and so we're making a product that to begin with destroys the planet, and then further onwards destroys the planet, and it doesn't help us in any form of way. So why not just use a product that might potentially make might be destructive at the beginning, but it has some sort of good solution towards helping the planet later on. But yeah, I don't know.
There's no destructive elements in hemp.
Well, no, not in hemp itself, but in the production of those things that you were talking about, right? To make plastics, you have to create a huge industry around that. There's so much other areas where where pollution and harm comes from, and those industries are purely created by demand. So
yeah. But I mean, I'm trying to understand what your question is in terms of why you wouldn't change how the industries produce now from producing.
Oh no, I'm not saying I wouldn't change. I'm definitely all for going forward towards hemp. I'm just voice of concern.
Concerned about what though? That's what I'm trying to say.
Well, I just explained is there's like, we say we have these alternatives to what we currently use, and that sounds like a great solution for what to solve the issue of climate change and our planet behaving the way it is, and to try to solve that. But I think hemp is not really going to change that if we continue to consume in the way that we do. I think that's true.
There's a habit you reckon we need to change, and that's bigger than hemp.
Oh,
sorry?
yeah. You're saying like the consuming antics of the world is out of control. Like we just consume too much. Yeah. No, I totally agree. And hemp's not gonna correct that, but it certainly will have much more help, a bigger benefit to the world if everyone suddenly stopped using plastic and say used hemp. Like there would be a total change to how the world would start looking in terms of the Pacific wouldn't have a massive garbage patch full of plastic. It would now just be hemp, and that hemp would biodegrade within 3 to 6 months anyway, so it would disappear. So totally different kettle of fish in that sense. Where's he gone? You can't just leave the podcast halfway through, you monkey.
You podcast.
Hey?
He's on the list. He's on the list.
You are on the list. You have insulted my
Yes, Bro, Uzi, dog.
Well, I wanted to go and put my rabbit away because it's got dark. But hey, love, can you put the rabbit away? Thanks, love. All right. Well, I've got. We might as well go on to question 2. We're already 25 minutes in, and we haven't even got past question 1 because we went on a massive tangent. But
I would
yeah.
really miss the tangent.
Before we go down another tangent, right? We're going to start again. Okay, you can't just disappear halfway through a podcast. All right.
Oh.
At least excuse yourself and say sorry. I'm just going to get myself another beer, and then I can stop. I can stop the recording and then start again. Jeez, you're something else.
We all got to
Jeez,
be
mate.
Right. Question 2. Why should people be invested in forests?
Well, now could hemp reclaim a desert? Sure, but would you rather use trees? Yes, because I mean you can make a park out of that, or you can store. I'm going to store animals. You can like populate it with animals and stuff, and you can create bigger habitats for humans and animals in the forest.
Increase the biodiversity.
Yeah, and I think big tree cover. I mean hemp has that's farming. Like everywhere else we don't have farmable land. I mean, just plant trees.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think there'll be a lot of people out there that would love to walk through the fields of hemp, as long as they're the specific strain type.
No, absolutely, like totally.
I can already hear an Irish song about the fields of hemp. I walk through the fields of hemp, only smoking them all.
In a series of very small fires.
No, you can't smoke. Well, you can smoke hemp, but you wouldn't really get much from it, to be honest. So.
No.
Yeah. I totally forgot the question again. What was the question?
You are the worst podcast person I've met.
Yeah.
And I've only done 4.
He only says that to everybody, though.
Why should people be interested in forests and trees?
Oh, well, I mean, like I said, this stuff it heals the earth, right? So, I mean, we all live here. So I think there's quite a direct connection with this being our pad. It benefits us. I mean, health, mental well-being and health has actually been, I think, increases when people are closer to trees. I mean, got this off the like little factoids off the internet. I mean, it's unverified, but I think
it is verified. It increases microbiome activity within the body.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Which increases the well-being of people. So the micro. Yeah. I'm not a scientist. I wish I was, but
You sound like one.
Yeah, say the big words. But there's a connection between the microbiomes in the air and how they, when you say ingest them, whether that's through breathing or whatever, that creates a chemical reaction which then increases the well-being of that person. So people, for instance, if there's anything that you can do, that say you're feeling down, a little depressed, go for a walk in the forest, but at the same time go barefoot, because apparently by going barefoot you're increasing that microbiome activity.
Why? Because you absorb it through your foot or something?
Well, that might be the case, especially if you cut yourself. Jeez, you'd be bleeding. I'm bleeding, but think of those microbiomes.
But you could just better off just going eating a whole bunch of dirt from there. Then. I'm not sure if that will help your well-being, though.
It's good to earth yourself occasionally.
Vlad, have you got a question for us?
Yeah. Not yeah, just a trivia question. I only found this out today. What is afforestation? The difference between afforestation and reforestation?
Reforestation is something where humans actively engage in what it actually planting trees to actually reforest the area, whereas the other one is a natural regrowth in that area.
Yeah, good guess, but no.
Ah, Jez. I thought I was
Bob
right.
Saget.
Bob Saget.
Yeah, reforestation is you planting the original trees back. Afforestation, it's non-native, so you're just making forests where there weren't any forests before.
All right, so it's atypical forestation.
Yeah. Oh no,
Yeah,
I
you
was
didn't
very,
know that, Chris? Jeez. All right, man.
I was happy to
I don't-
find this out.
Activist Day.
I was more or less right. I was more or less right. It was all about putting trees back anyway.
So there are a lot of countries that are involved in afforestation. America, a lot of afforestation. Russia, South Africa is a little bit. There's a map that you can go and see about the countries that have been planting forests. And actually, Brazil has actually been planting. All we hear is about them cutting things down. They're planting. South Africa is doing well. America is doing real well. So there are a lot of afforesting projects all around the world, actually. So there are people planting.
Yeah, well, talking of the Amazon, that's one of the heartbeats of the world. They reckon if the Amazon gets deforested anymore, it could create a totally different world for everyone. Like in the degree where they reckon that ocean temperatures would rise by 2 or 3 degrees, which would then technically be too hot for some species of fish, which would kill them, which would then have a massive knock-on effect. Like this, but that's when it comes to ecology, like the anthropogenic effects, as they call it, the human
I
effects.
didn't come with any big words today.
The human effects on the planet, and then that links into the butterfly effect. So you may have a small little change in one point that has a massive radical shift and change of the rest of the area. So yeah, the Amazon, like just the fact that we need it there, because it plays such a vital role on how this planet breathes and
Wasn't there same scare sort of with bees? If all the bees died, we'd be dead in like 1.5 months.
Yeah, well, we certainly wouldn't be dead, but when it comes to things like pollination, stuff like that, like there are other ways of pollinating, obviously through wind and insect pollination and stuff like that, but bees play a massive part in cross
I
pollination.
heard the humble old fly is the same. Like if that fly she's dead, then yeah, we're all gonna have a bad day.
Well, look, people don't realize like mosquitoes are pollinators.
Oh, cool.
And people always see mosquitoes as a just animals that track you down at night, give you a nice little nip, suck your blood, and then bugger off. Sounds like a good Saturday night with one of my ex-girlfriends.
Very good.
Right, what was your next question, Bill?
My next question was, what's your views on genetically modifying trees?
Oh look, for reforesting now, like I'll put this. Otherwise, it wouldn't be called reforesting. But yeah, I'm all for it. I think the world has changed enough. If you can quickly take a tree from a desert area, and if you need a base root to adapt a tree to grow, yeah, by all means, I say go and engineer away. If that creature that you create sequesters carbon and solves the problem for the local village or whatever, Yeah, I'm not a fan of it, but I mean, if it has its use, I mean, put it like that. I can't think of any ethical issue off the top of my head. Doesn't mean I'm right though, but I mean, yeah, it's a tree. I mean,
I mean,
they
I would love to see that they bring back a tree that can grow extremely, to the size where, the trees they used to have back in the day of dinosaurs or whatnot.
Okay.
And,
Like the California redwood.
yeah, some of those massive trees, and we just plant the shit out of them on deserts or something.
Yeah. Yeah, wonderful.
But what's your views, Chris?
Yeah, well, I've been reading this book called "The Confessions of a Greenpeace Dropout." It's basically about this guy who co-founded Greenpeace, and then he left after 15 years because Greenpeace became very militant, almost like a religion, and they started using like shock and awe as part of their the way they did things rather than using like scientific kind of
Approaches.
yeah, like using the evidence from the scientific community. They were kind of just going off like, oh well, my uncle Tom said that's probably a bad idea, so I would heavily invest in making sure that doesn't happen. Well, if Uncle Tom said so, bugger that, we're not going to do it, you know. But he talks about genetically modified crops, and I think he makes a good point in saying that probably, I wouldn't like to give a percentage, but a very high percentage of food that we eat today is all been modified. It's all been it's not like the wild natural source. It's been modified to some point where it's totally different to what it was when it first came around. So
like carrots, they weren't orange.
Yeah. So like if you go back down the genetic tree, so to speak, like species down to the genome and the gene and stuff like that, like your carrot would have come from some wild source, but it's been modified genetically to look like what it is now because it's been cross-pollinated with some other food source. So humans have been doing it for eons now, where they've been changing the type of food that we have, genetically modifying it to what we have now. But the thing is, we don't look at a carrot or a banana or the humble beetroot and like, oh, I'm not going to eat that because that's been genetically modified. No, we eat it because it gives us the nutrients we need to survive. So I've got a new respect for what genetically modified actually means, because I was in the camp before where
Test tube.
yeah, where it was kind of I wouldn't say yeah, well the thing is that people look at genetically modified as something that, you know, has been severely tampered with and had acid poured all, I don't know, you know, just, I don't know what views they have, but they have like this kind of like, oh, the end of the world kind of view, when it's not actually like that. And a lot of genetically modified things are actually doing real good things for the world. Like, for instance, just an example without going on too long, this one scientist used a grain of rice because a lot of people in countries who, I won't say third world, economically oppressed countries, let's call them that, where they weren't getting beta carotene source. So beta carotene is a vitamin or a nutrient that helps eyesight. So without that, as a child, you can go blind. So a lot of kids were going blind in places like India, Africa, and places like that. And so this scientist genetically modified the humble rice grain and modified it so it would have beta carotene within the rice itself. So it came out as a yellow rice. Now, the Greenpeace and WWF and people like that, they were all over it, saying, "Oh no, it's genetically modified. It's going to create health issues and all this kind of stuff." And the scientists were like, "No, it's not. We've just genetically modified it so it has a certain nutrient within inside that grain to be able to give the people the nutrients they need so they don't go blind." But yet it took many years for this to get through because people were using the scaremonger tactic of saying, well, this isn't normal, this isn't natural, kind of thing.
Well, I'm hanging out for that peach they modified so it doesn't get leaf curl.
You and your peaches.
Yeah, but I heard for somebody, because the black boy peach doesn't, and it's resistant. But my other peach tree gets hammered, and then somebody told me, maybe you, that they actually did fix the humble peach, so it's resistant to that disease. So I must just find where this thing is, and I'd love to have it actually. Yeah, I hear you, Chris. Yeah, you can modify. Actually, a lot of foods aren't modified for the people. They're modified to grow in the conditions wherever they be found as well.
Yeah.
So it's for
and
production.
be resistant to pesticides, certain bugs and diseases and also whatnot. But yeah.
Well, plants themselves have natural resistance to like bugs and pests. They actually secrete some sort of pesticide themselves, which can be harmful to humans.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, yeah, but it's like genetic modification is not necessarily someone with a syringe and another syringe and they're splicing these things in a little tube thing. It's more like,
creating killer tomatoes.
Yeah. It's more like, it's like how they splice two different types of trees together. Where you before at its infancy, you cut it at a certain angle, you put another branch of another type of tree in there, and suddenly you have some sort of modified sort of tree that's growing. And pretty much the science is the same, and for food, obviously they will at some point they will to identify further details about it that might use all sorts of other methods, but in essence, that's what it potentially looks like.
Yeah.
I tell you what, this discussion really needs true scientists in between.
Probably, yeah, we are.
Something could go. That's bullshit. That's bullshit. Chemistry doesn't dictate that. Dictates that you're a knob. All right. So. Right, Vlad, I've got a next question for you. Well, and you, Phil, as well. If you could build your own forest, where would you build it?
I would love the challenge of a dry place. So if it's here, I mean, maybe Central Otago is the closest bit. Just, deserty.
So that's it. Why Otago? Why you've got anywhere on the planet that you could go and build a forest? Why Otago?
Well, that's the closest dry place. I mean, Australia, I think there's no huge projects to a forest yet, even with but I mean, I don't know why I would. It's probably a natural sort of desert. I don't know if it's, no desert's truly natural maybe, but I mean, well, anyway, yeah, forest in Australia, wherever's the next driest place, go and plant a forest. If I could get involved in the projects in Africa, China as well as huge, even bigger, huge projects, I'm likely to go there. Or anywhere. So, yeah, whatever deserty place, whatever its name, go and plant a forest there.
So to reverse the desertification.
Yeah,
anyway. No. Well, maybe we'll have to sort it out. Maybe we should plan a trip somewhere for a couple of weeks and go and plant trees in a desert. Get involved, so to speak. Get involved. I'd love to go to the Holy Land. Go and see my mate.
Trees on a dairy farm.
Yeah, I mean,
without them knowing. I'm gonna plant some trees here and some hemp. I'm gonna plant some hemp so you know what it is, you bastards. What about you, Phil? Where would you, if you plant some trees or a forest?
I'd start with with Christchurch, to be honest. There's plenty of deforested land here that is, you know, back in the day it was full of trees.
Yeah,
So it needs to, you know, at least fix the place to where I live and then start onwards, because I don't know how truly the rest of the world is. I haven't been everywhere, so I can't really say for certain, but you know, the things that it's in front of me, I'd say that would be the place where I'd start.
Yeah, it's quite sad actually, because the thing about New Zealand was it used to be just completely forest. Point where Captain Cook, when he arrived at New Zealand, he wrote in his blog, he had a camera out. He was giving himself a selfie, you know. Yeah, Captain's log, New Zealand, 1776. He said how the bird life was deafening. Like he could barely hear himself think. Like when he was moored out on the ocean just outside the mainland of New Zealand, just a thicket of forest and bush, and the bird life was deafening. And I can tell you now that is not the case anymore. If you've never been to New Zealand, and that makes me sad. Like I'd love to.
There were a lot of fishermen on that boat because they told a lot of fat lies. Don't know if this is quite a lie, but apparently they could hear New Zealand before seeing it. I'm sure the wind was right.
Yeah, maybe it was some dude in the cabin boy was like, "Ooh, ooh."
Yeah, that's him. No, I heard it was quite deafening.
I'm going to quickly grab another beer. So.
Fair enough. All right, Vlad, you got any questions?
Yeah, trivia questions, and they're related, because it's just an interesting factoid. What country was named after a tree? And then what country has a tree on its flag? Part A is what country was named after a tree? Yeah, I was quite surprised. Didn't guess it.
Isn't one of the Pacific Islands has a tree? Does it like
No,
a palm?
one of the bigger countries. They're like a bigger country.
Oh, okay. So they actually have a actual tree. Is it one of the Asian countries?
Oh, you're talking about the flag, okay? No, the one with the flag on it actually is Lebanon.
Of course, yes. The Lebanese Lebanese wood. What was it? Was the cedar, wasn't it? The cedar. Yeah. Yes. Boom shakalaka.
Oh, Paul, it was trivia again. What country was named after a tree?
Ebony?
Ebony and ivory.
Ebony, there in Central Africa. Yeah.
She was a good friend of mine.
I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah.
I just heard Lebanese, so I copy that.
I know, yeah, it was the Lebanese cedar, the Lebanese flag. But
yeah.
What country was named after? Wasn't that the question?
Yeah, what country was named after a tree? One of the bigger ones in this world. It's not an island or something obscure. Like, I mean, every now and then you find a new African country exists. Quite big, popular and well known enough. It's not America, obviously.
Liechtenstein.
Yeah, it was Brazil.
Brazil is named after a tree.
Yeah. Well, the tree's not just Brazil. It's Brasilia, whatever. Maybe something Latin. I don't know.
Okay. I never knew that. That was the worst question ever, Vlad.
Trivia, yeah. You feel now
no one cares, I think, was the...
Don't you treat our guests like that?
Yeah, no guest. He's my brother-in-law. Right. What is your take on the forest industry?
Hey, it's my turn, isn't it?
Bugger off. You've got your beer. It's my question. What's your take on the forest industry?
Yeah, why not? Only addition I want to ever make to the forest industry is where possible is to only chop down sort of, say, a percentage of trees so that you can still see the forest, but you will be then obviously cutting a percentage from a larger area, you know what I mean? So it still looks like you've got the forest, but there's a roaring forestry industry in there. So, for example, if you divvy up your whole forest in a whole bunch of noughts and crosses, and then you do, say, one section from each noughts and cross across the whole board, so 1/9 every year and there gone, and then you keep. I like forestry, yeah. I mean, we use wood.
Well, look, wood is the most renewable source in the world.
Hmm.
Like, there's no source of something that you use for building, heating, energy. Well, energy being one, the big one. Toilet paper. Hey, look, if we didn't have forest, we wouldn't have toilet paper. You'd be wiping your bum with sandpaper. And believe me, I've done that once, and I'm never doing it again.
Well, didn't you just say hemp was going to be the next revolutionary thing? You just pretty much said that hemp can do pretty much the majority of the things that you just said.
Well,
Yeah,
we can do
hemp-
writing paper, so toilet paper shouldn't be a stretch. It'll be just a bit harder. You've got to get used to it.
It'll be a reusable fiber.
A reusable toilet paper.
Yeah. No. Do you know much about the forest industry, Phillips?
I wouldn't say I'm very clued up on it, no. But
Okay, what's the general view of it? Is it a good thing, bad thing?
well, I think it's needed. I think the way we, yeah, I mean, I guess it just comes down to how we live and how we consume consume wood. Wood in general is, like you said, it's a good thing. It's really reliable, continuously recyclable. And that's all. It's all very good things. But again, it's like we use such large quantities that it becomes we use it in a destructive way, essentially. So I don't have a problem with the industry itself. I think I just have a problem with how we consume it and the quantities we consume it at.
In regards to what kind of consumption? Like, I'm trying to figure out like what in toilet paper? Because hey, look, this is my toilet paper. All right, can you see it?
Right, I'm never shaking your hand again.
and so you shouldn't.
I will turn my back and go the other way when I see you next. No, I mean, I guess it just goes back to my original point previously when I said, with hemp, I could imagine hemp being exactly what the forestry industry is currently at. I could quite easily see that is going to be the case with it. Essentially, if we consume it the way, consume things the way we do. So, it can be a good thing, it can be a bad thing, and it's like my friend was looking into building a mud hut or like building house out of a completely natural sort of wood, and because there's industry standards that dictate what's allowed and what's not allowed, and if you're going to make a dwelling, you have to comply to these standards in New Zealand, and unless you live out in the wop-wops and tell nobody that you're there, essentially. But there's not many people that would actually go and do that. So the problem is like with currently, when we build a house, we have to treat certain wood in a certain way so it doesn't get rotten, or there's certain other things that we have to continuously do to treat the wood in a way to make it acceptable for us to use. And again, those things are a destructive thing, and I don't know. There's so much. The problem is that it's just everything's so entangled with one another. So when you say you have a solution for one thing, it's not so easy. So my take on the industry is I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah, Hemp though is interesting in that it wasn't ever used because it wasn't. It was not used because it was illegal. It does, I think, without changing our habits, will have a slight impact on maybe bettering the place. Those plastic industries, they're actually already set up. We just got to provide them with a different sort of thing. So yeah, I'm thinking, well, if you're going to fly it halfway across the world, that's why I'm also a fan of building local industries. But you're right, so it has a footprint there too. Yeah, not a magic bullet, but we're not trying it at all. Even if it only saves 10%. No, it's not 100% a thing, or however great you may think it be. If it only does 10%, then I'm like, wow, let's do it. So I think maybe I know fuel already doesn't work out. You can be paying a gazillion bucks for a liter of that fuel. Yeah, no, you're gonna be paying a heck of a lot of money for fuel. So that's not going to really work. But it doesn't mean we shouldn't get the university students cranking out better and better ways and more, and always investigating it.
Yeah, definitely. No, I mean, like, it's like, I think currently we rely on wood on so many things, so like toilet paper and building houses and all sorts of other things that come into play that we don't even realize. And so hence why we create such massive forests, and then we chop them all down, and then destroy the land in the process of it. And
Yeah.
that is a concern, like, to how we are doing the process to begin with, and two is, do we really need to use wood for everything? Can we use something else that potentially might do a better job in this particular area, saying, we only utilize wood for building houses, we don't use it for burning or making toilet paper or anything like that. We use maybe hemp, have some sort of a balance where we kind of reduce the impact we have on the planet because of how we consume.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess that really doesn't go into the industry of the forest industry. The forest industry is only responding to a demand, so they're only doing what they're doing. I don't have a problem with them, planting the trees. I do have a problem with how they cut down the trees. That's the only issue that I can only see with them. But
Yeah, it's the demand, dude. Yeah, can't argue with the demand.
Right, we're running out of time because I can see we've already reaching an hour mark, and I know no one's ever going to spend an hour listening to us tripe on about trees and hemp. Jeez, I'd rather be sitting on the toilet and hoping for a swift exit. But anyway, this is my final question. You have to live as a tree for a year. What tree would you be?
I would be. Yeah, it's a wonderful question. Hey, wonderful. Phil, jump in anytime. I want to choose one.
I'll be the big redwood tree that
The sequoia.
No, the ones that like grew back in the dinosaur days. They're just so cool, You want to be
you got the sequoia redwoods in California, which grow to up to 100 meters tall.
Yeah, it's perfect. I'll be there.
Then you got the mountain ash in Australia, in Tasmania, that also grow just as high.
Yeah, the higher the better.
The higher the better. I want to be a big tree. I want to be a big tree, Daddy. I've always wanted to be a big tree. Vlad wants to be a little tree. He wants to be a pittosporum. I reckon a lemon would.
Yeah, okay. I'll just be that. Yeah, it's wonderful. It's fast growing, so Kiwi should know. You get a fast grow, it's a hedge as well. When you let it go, it's a tree. Fastest growing, can do about 4 meters a year if you're really lucky. 4.5 was actually the numbers I read. And green leaves year round. Fast growing, year round green.
Yeah. Do you know what? I think I'd like to be a fig tree.
Yeah.
Fig tree.
Fig you.
Fig off. Not only does it have impressive big fat leaves, not only does it grow to a good 6, 7, 8 meters tall, but it also gives a nice fruit obviously being the fig. Everyone loves a fig, and it also loses its leaves, because I think with a tree that stays evergreen, it doesn't really change. It just stays the same. I like things that change, and I love springtime. I love seeing new growth coming into something, and it just gives you that impression of, a new start and new beginnings, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, fig tree, definitely a fig tree.
Very good.
Thank
All
you,
right.
thank you.
Can I get a last question myself, or do you want to get the last question?
Well, you can, but I'll edit it out.
Well, thank you. How many trees do you reckon we would need to even out climate change?
Well, they
According
reckon
to
about 200 trees a person is what your carbon offset is.
Shit, that's a lot of trees.
Yeah,
That's
it's a lot.
7 billion times 200. Hang on a second. Let me get the old calculator out. I don't think my calculator will be able to calculate that.
Well, that'd
'cause
be
it's
40,
shot.
like 40
It
times
really isn't though. 200 trees is bugger all, to be honest. You could quite
Well, I
easily
think-
do that within a few months.
Yeah, you could fit it in on this earth. It'll definitely fit on this earth, but you'll probably be planting on a lot of non-arid land as well. Not arid.
Okay, take this. Like, with the whole universal income, imagine if they said, okay, if you want to have your money for this week, you have to plant X amount of trees this week.
I'll do that for a job.
Well, with the universal income, you have to have some sort of
Yeah.
thing you can do, right? It's gotta happen.
Right, so I've got a calculator out that calculates big numbers. It's not a crappy no calculation.
Big letter
kind of.
and big numbers.
I've done 7 billion, just as a general estimate of the general population. I know it's about 7.3 or something, times 200, and the answer is a lot.
How many?
A lot. That's the answer. The
And
answer
do they have to be fully grown for them to truly take effect, or do you just plant them and you're like, oh yeah, no, I'm done?
Well, I'm sure planting them is essential, but I'm sure when the measurement was taken about the carbon that the trees were fully developed. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, one it depends on the tree, because different trees sequester carbon.
Or
Secondly, it depends on the age of the tree, because new trees tend to sequester more carbon because they need more carbon to grow. But yet some fully grown trees also sequester a lot of carbon because it enhances their stability within the formation that they find themselves. So yeah, it all depends. There's many variables that go into that as well. It's not just a case of, hey, I'm gonna
Be scientific, Chris. We don't need no scientists, none.
yeah, well, I
Yeah,
know.
mate.
Look, hemp sequests a lot, so plant hemp. 7 billion times 200. All right, look, this is what New Zealand needs to do. It needs to say, yeah, everyone, do what you want with hemp. Go and get your seeds, plant it, bang, smash, bang, wallop. But do 200 hemp plants, and there you go.
We would definitely be planting 200 hemp plants per person.
Look, I'm assuming cannabis also has the same kind of sequestration, considering hemp is a cousin of cannabis. So, hey, look, if you just mix and match, smash, bang, wallop. How's your mother? She's all
And then
right.
you put the carbon back into the air just to keep the cycle going. Huh?
Exactly. Right, boys. This has been a fundamentally tongue-twisting, almost mesmerizing conversation. I'm not
Hey,
sure
well,
how I'm gonna.
I got two questions, quick fire. They're real simple. What tree do you like to climb the most? Like super quick.
Your mum.
Oh, jeez. Oh my god.
I'm sure there's a tree called your mum somewhere. There must be.
And best tree for having a beer under.
I don't really seem to think about,
A
whether
dead tree.
what tree. A dead tree.
Yeah.
The reason I say a dead tree is that you can sit there and mourn with it whilst having a beer.
That's if you're having a
Oh,
sad one.
actually, I don't know the name of this tree.
Flibius, Kalamana.
No. I'm terrible with that. I don't know tree names to begin with very well at all.
Why did we get you on this conversation? That's the first question.
What was it? What's the one where they have like the long
Willow.
like wines coming down?
Weeping Willow.
See?
Yeah. I love those trees. Those are awesome to sit under on a hot day, having a beer. I think that would be.
Ditto,
Amazing.
yeah, Willow. Yeah.
Nice. Well, that's a great way to end this podcast. The Weeping Willow. There's nothing worse. I mean, nothing better than the Weeping Willow. Right, lads. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for joining me with Chatting Up the Chick. Episode 4. We talked about trees and hemp. It was all gravy. It was smash bang wallop. Bish bash bosh. How's your mother? She's all right. Yes. Cheerio.
See ya.